For 2024, a local law of the County of Albany, New York, amending Chapter 270 of the Albany County Code to provide a real property tax exemption for living quarters for parent or grandparent. Dr. McLaughlin, are you here to talk?
Yeah, I'm here visiting, but I'm happy to
welcome.
talk about it. Thank you. So the goal of this, or the purpose of this, is to create a policy where the property tax exemption could also be applied if you construct a dwelling on your property for purposes of housing your elderly family member. With the idea being, we want to do everything we can to assist people who are trying to accommodate older family members into their housing situation. We had this situation in my family to try to do that for my dad as he was aging, and with the goal, of course, trying to keep families intact. Everyone wants to age in place. We have a wonderful skilled nursing facility in Albany County that's fabulous, but if you can, as you age, it's just a nice thing and cheaper as an alternative. This kind of scenario to me is the perfect kind of option, honestly.
Okay. We've had a public hearing on this already? So this would be, we're at the stage where we'd be moving this out with a recommendation one way or the other?
That's right.
Does anybody have any questions they want to? Mr. Bergdorf?
I just wanted to mention, I think this is very well drafted. I think it is a targeted tax credit, affects everyone in the county, and it has income limitations, so it's not a giveaway to anyone who doesn't need it. And it also has a clawback provision so that in the event that someone's senior or family member is gone and they're not there to certify, there isn't an unneeded exemption provided. So I think it's fantastic, and I would move it.
I just want to thank you. That's high praise, and I appreciate it.
It's a good bill.
Yeah.
Are you
I
making-
did not draft it, though, but thank you.
Mr. Bergdorf, are you making a motion?
Yes,
For a favorable recommendation?
it's a favorable recommendation.
All right, Dr. McLaughlin. All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about this?
No, I just concur. I'm sorry, Chairman. But I concur with the two speakers previously. I think it's a wonderful message that we're sending to the seniors in our community, that we do want you to stay in place. We do want you to stay at home, no matter what part of the county you live in. This is something, as Mr. Bergdorf says, affects everyone. So I'm happy to see it as well.
One last thing, can I be a co-sponsor?
Of course. The only other thing I want to add, since you complimented the drafting, is this was a partnership. County Exec's office kind of, came down and we discussed it with them. So appreciate the fact that, it came together in that regard, and nice drafting to boot.
Great. Okay. All in favor of moving out with favorable recommendation? Aye. Any opposed? All right. That motion carries. Thank you. So the next item, moving on to current business, is item 7, which is a proposal requiring programmatic information in requests for legislative action and codifying existing practices. Who's the primary sponsor? What's that? Okay. Mr. Conway, do you want to
Yes.
talk to this one?
I just have a few notes I wanted to relay. Thank you, Chairman, and other committee members. I know I'm still fairly new here, and I've been learning quite a bit. A lot of information comes in, but I've noticed one thing when these RLAs come in, our respective staffs and members are afforded an opportunity to review these programs, contracts, procurements, and other expenditures. I've noticed that in my short time, the legislature, sometimes these RLAs can be lacking in specifics. I was on an elder care committee meeting when I first started, and there was lots of questions with the commissioner of the Department of Aging about how many people, the efficacy of the program, how many people it was serving. There were a lot of questions that were unanswered. So I just wanted to propose this to kind of codify and add the important pieces for RLAs. Most notably on page 2, item 7, I'll read this real quick. It deals with programs and following information which should be provided for programs, including contracted programs providing direct services, products, or other benefits to county residents, the number of persons to be served, the number of persons served in prior years, if that's applicable, and if measured, quantifiable benefits to those benefiting from the program. That was the question we had for the commissioner about that certain program. And I believe it was Carolyn, they didn't really have the answers, and and Legislator Simpson, Robinson, I mean. There was not a lot of questions that were unanswered that we wanted to know. So that's what kind of got the ball rolling on this, and we are open to suggestions and any changes that might want to be made.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Council Kennedy.
Thank you. So from a legal perspective for the Democratic members, just initially, the legislature has no authority to compel the executive to do anything, and we can't do it within our own rules, least of all. But following up on that also, the majority office is actually the one that controls the RLA process, essentially. We work with the chair's office and the minority office and the executive office to ensure that we get the information needed. We just revamped the RLA form within the last 2 months. So anything that you would like to be added, we certainly can add it, but respectfully, I don't believe this is the appropriate way to do it.
So what would the appropriate way to be would be to
A conversation with my office.
with you guys?
Essentially, we let the executive's office know what we need in order to move forward with RLAs. If we don't get what we need after follow-up, we don't move forward with an RLA. So there's an enforcement mechanism already built into that. But it's our office that does all of that. We spend a great deal of time following up on RLAs, getting further information, doing whatever's needed in order to get the information necessary to write the resolutions and get all the backup you have for the agendas and whatnot. So if there's anything you'd like to see, just let us know.
So information that we might need, we could request it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Just one,
Yes, Mr. Bergdorf.
just so you understand why I'm proposing this. We go through the RLAs when we get them, and we sit as a conference and go through them. And we often have numerous questions beyond the RLAs. And in many instances, they seem to be the same questions. A lot to do about metrics, a lot to do about history, and that sort of thing. And we generally communicate with Cam or before him, Mike McLaughlin, and they are generally very responsive, but sometimes we don't get the information till, real close to the committee meeting. So I think our thought was to get this information more upfront so that, everyone kind of gets a sense of what metrics there are that goes with some of these. So I would leave it to the discretion of the sponsor and our council minority leader how to proceed.
So I guess I'm all in favor of any member of the legislature having whatever information they need at any time to make an intelligent decision about everything that comes before us. I will say, the one thing that it kind of occurred to me, there are specific pieces of legislation or RLAs that you may have questions about, and I think you should pose those questions and get answers to them before we vote on them. When I looked at this, what kind of jumped out to me was that we would be demanding a lot of information for everything. And it would be a lot of work that would have to be, an additional work that would go into every item presumably a lot of times when no one is really seeking that particular information. And some of the things that I'm talking about is like the previous legislative history, including similar items, potential impact on pending litigation, and number 7 includes a lot of information. I think to require someone to put all of that information together for every single RLA just seems like a lot of work, where we could probably, it might be more effective to tailor the requests to specific items instead of having all this information have to be put together for every single time. Because I mean, how many of these do we do on a monthly basis? Like dozens and dozens of these,
easily.
right? It seems like a lot of administrative burden when we could probably just be a little more like focused about it.
So, like, it's, right now for, it's for $100,000 and above threshold, would that, if we
No,
change-
everything that comes before the legislature is $100,000 and above, unless it's for like a sale of something, which automatically comes to us regardless of price.
So to not waste people's time, like I think you were getting at, Chairman, if we brought that up more higher, would that be something that would be, I don't know?
Well, again, I think that if there's big items that are higher, you could always,
You're gonna-
on an individualized basis, say, hey, this is a big item, we'd like this information, and I think you'll get it.
You'll get it.
Yeah. I mean, as a side note, maybe we should raise the threshold for RLAs above $100,000 anyway, because do we really need to be voting on, but that's a tangent, so. Anybody else want to talk about this? Mr. Gray?
Yeah, I'm a co-sponsor, but if there was one wish I had for the legislature, it's that every piece of paper that came to us had the value of their work for social service. And I talk about this all the time. You know, if your idea is to get people off drugs, how many people are on drugs in January, how many were off in December? So anything that, and I understand the majority is the gatekeeper on the RLAs, but anything that can be done that makes the RLAs more open to the idea of the power of clarity when it comes to the value of their work is very helpful when you're trying to make a decision about should we spend money on this, or how do we improve the lives of people in our county. And that's what I'd love to see, is some kind of mechanism that the majority supports that really places an emphasis on showing us the value of what they did.
Do you, I guess, are there instances where you have sought those sorts of metrics and you have
Every budget
not-
hearing.
Right, but where you've sought them in advance and like you've been stonewalled and people
No,
want
it's
to
just
do
we
that
don't keep track of the
information?
things. It may seem like a simple thing to say, smoking, we gave $1 million for a smoking program, and I said, how many people were smoking in January and how many people weren't in December? And they said, we don't have that information. So, because there's a lot of paperwork we require in government, and I'd like to reduce some of it and really focus on the things that matter most. And that's not always an easy thing to determine, but sometimes it's a pretty clear thing that getting people off addiction is what our goal is. How are we doing? Those are the kinds of things I've been asking for 8 years, and it has to change our culture a little bit. And everybody there working in social services wants to do well and help people. But if there's this saying, if you don't track it, it doesn't count. The things we track are the things that will have the most chance for improvement.
Would you be willing to could we try to just be more specific and surgical about getting the information you want as opposed to sort of this omnibus requirement? Could we maybe go that route instead of this?
I'd really like everyone to sort of think this way. In their own view, what do they see as value? And then that should be part of our discussion before the committees, is what are our members' view of value, and are we getting that value? So it's not just up to me to decide. I think if we can shift that culture, even a little bit, would make a big difference in the lives of the people we're serving.
Mr. Berger?
To give you an example, I was sitting here last night with the Social Services Committee, and they awarded a contract to someone, and it was 100% state money, but as Mark keeps reminding us, state money is taxes we all pay, so we should
My constituents.
should be as concerned about that as county money. But it had to do with a consultant who was going to go in and forensically fight Medicaid fraud. And the question was asked, well, how much fraud have we found? and people start looking at their shoes and saying, well, we can maybe get you some of that information. So the question is, if for 20 years we've been hiring the same vendor to do the same thing, what did it yield? I mean, I think that's a legitimate question. And that's something that, I mean, even if somebody has to put in RLA, check the box, cannot be determined, or we have no records, or whatever, it's the sort of thing, are we spending money that's worthwhile? Is it making a difference? I think it would be a good thing to know. So it was just something that happened last night, so it was fresh in my mind.
Yeah, it was just something I noticed a lot of money being spent, and I just wanted to see the impact it was having and people it was serving to make sure everything's being spent appropriately. That was really what spurred this.
Can I just say one thing?
Certainly.
Since we're talking about kind of public health initiatives as a focal point, and I've been at some of the committee meetings and heard Mr. Grimm's comments, and I think these have been prior years and so forth. Sometimes it's not a addition problem. I mean, it's not as easy as a simple math problem. I mean, the example you raised, which is how many people quit smoking, it seems like that should be just A plus B equals C. In public health, it's not, because they're also tracking people who quit smoking and then came back on. They're tracking new populations that started while people stopped. So they have that information for sure, but it's not as simple as just putting 3 sentences on an RLA. It's, in a lot of ways, probably, a little bit of a research project. So I think we need to be mindful that the questions may seem very simple to you, but if you are a public health researcher or a part of the delivery system, it's not as easy as like a simple math problem. There's a lot of elements that are involved in it. It's things that, I just said a couple of them, but it's much more complex than that. So I don't think it's an intention to withhold information or obfuscate information. I think it's more complex, and I'm kind of worried about loading up the RLA with essentially what seem to be simple questions that turn into, 3 pages of explanation about a complex addiction delivery model that is not as easy as saying, well, in January, the number was this, and it worked, and so June, the number was this. That's I guess.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy, Joanne, but I'm saying the challenge is getting these real clear answers from a bureaucracy that's like most bureaucracies. So they have a certain inertia, and they do what the previous group did and the previous group before them. So it takes a little bolt of culture to say, I know you're working hard and it's frustrating dealing with social services. It's a big challenge. We don't want to throw more paperwork at you. Because I'm for reducing paperwork and have fewer things that we're monitoring, the big ticket items that really matter. And if we had more time to do that and we had a culture that insisted on it, I think everyone would benefit. But I appreciate what you're saying.
Anybody else?
I'm going to go Mr. Reed first.
Okay, so just trying to catch up where we are. The proposal here, my understanding from majority council is things included in this, there are items that we can't actually compel if we pass this, that are included.
None of this, you can't, the
Maybe none of
legislature
it,
cannot.
so some, maybe all of it. However, in their system of checks and balances, there is a check and balance in place with the RLA process that, is administered by the majority's office, and there's an offer from a majority's office when there's information missing from RLAs that if any legislator or the minority conference requests it, I think you have an offer to provide that information. So that's kind of where we are. So I feel like there's two. And with that being said, I'll just say that I have found the staff from the majority's office, the chair's office, minority's office to be incredibly professional and easy and great to work with. So I, for me, I wouldn't want to. I don't think we should move this forward. I would just wonder if the members proposing might take the majority's council's offer up, so to speak, and see if that system that is in place, maybe just like a re-clarifying and recalling of like how this all can work, to try that out, and we come to a point where you feel like it's not working, maybe come back and revisit this, and then have the discussion on, you might propose something that we actually could compel from all of our partners in government.
Table it for now and
Yeah, I mean, that's really, it's a sponsor's
Yes.
call on that, but I feel like, I just want to like set like kind of where we are, where this stuff we may not be able to actually do. There is a check and balance in place, right? And, and if it wasn't a realized, offer of communication, have that made again, that the majority's office and the part they play in the RLA process, being happy to provide information if it's requested when these come up, and after you folks do your research on them.
That sounds good.
Mr. Moriello?
Yes, well, what I'm thinking as I'm listening to everybody speaking here is that when we're voting on these, we really should know how successful these programs are. So maybe it takes a little bit more work to determine how many people were served, how much money was spent, how much money per person was spent. And so I think what we're looking to do is we're trying to get a little bit more information as to really how successful and effective these programs are. So, I mean, my thought is, and again, it's up to Ryan, if maybe we table this for a month and we have our staff dialogue with the majority staff, and maybe we can come up with a compromise or something that'll work. I think what's real important here is that we need, if we're going to vote on something, we really need to know how effective and how successful these grants are, these programs are. So we're not really trying to add additional work. We're just trying to gather enough information so we can vote intelligently on these resolutions. So my thought, it's up to the sponsor, if maybe we could do that in dialogue with majority staff, and maybe we can come back next month with something.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're going to table it pending those discussions?
Correct.
Great, all right. Good discussion. Then moving on to item 8, public hearing of proposed local law G. Okay, so this is for local law of the County of Albany, amending the Albany County Charter, and local law number 8 for 1983 is amended for the purpose of creating the position of deputy chairperson of the Albany County Legislature. Chair Cunningham, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a good bit at the last meeting. The thinking is that we would codify an existing role that we created, which is the deputy chair. We modeled it, and Patrick Collins is the one who kind of worked on this. We modeled it very much like what the deputy county exec role is, with the same kind of limitations as far as responsibilities, but the ability for that role to be in a similar vein, a deputy to the ledge.
Okay, great. Any questions? Can I have a motion to move this
I
out?
like the motion.
Second. Feeny? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and so that's moving out. Favorable recommendation. Oh wait, what did we do? Did we just send it to public hearing? What did we just do? We sent it to public hearing. Yeah. So number 9, stay with pending public hearing. Okay. Do I need to do anything to make the record? Did I say we're putting it off favorable recommendation? Okay. Good, thanks. So number 10, local law number H for 2024, a local law of the County of Albany imposing additional wireless communication surcharges pursuant to the authority of tax law, section 186G. Madam Chairman. Chairwoman.
Rebecca is going to.
Oh, yes.
After this law was initially passed about a year and a half ago now, it eventually made its way to Tax and Finance, who eventually at some point recognized it. They have asked us to add the word additional to what was passed previously. And they have said essentially that this cannot move forward unless the word additional is added. So that is what this does. It adds the word additional.
So purely technical.
Yes, it's solely to
Correction. satisfy
satisfy the lawyers at Tax and Finance.
Lawyers, all right. Corey, do I have a question?
Am I correct in understanding that because we didn't have the word additional in it, that this was never implemented?
Well, that's a funny story, but...
Because somebody told me that the sheriff lost $6 million because Tax and Finance wouldn't do it, and I'd like to know whether that's true or not.
We don't know. Tax and Finance came back to us within the last less than a month and said, hey, we never got this that you sent us. Can you resend it to us? So we resent it after they viewed it. So all this time, a year and a half had passed, we had no idea that anything was wrong from Tax and Finance. So Tax and Finance said, hey, we need to look at it. Having looked at it again, they then determined that the word additional was necessary. My understanding is that it may not have been implemented. I've heard mixed things on whether funds were being collected by the state and by Verizon and various other agencies for that purpose.
Okay, I have
Yeah.
a couple of follow-ups. First of all, we have Dave Riley in the room, and if anybody can tell us whether we're getting extra sales tax money.
No, the county is not getting the funds because
Oh, okay, well.
the state has never released it to us. My understanding is the state collects it and then releases it to the counties individually. So to be sure, to my knowledge, we have not received any additional funds. Yeah.
So the sheriff did not get what he anticipated? Well, the county did not get. The county did not
Yep.
get.
We had thought that the money was being held for transfer at some point in time, but apparently that may or may not be the case after listening to Tax and Finance.
Second thing was, I don't remember if it was yesterday or today, Nicole sent us all a memo from the cellular users, I assume it was some sort of users group.
That's a different piece of legislation.
I think it was this.
No,
No,
that's-
that's-
yeah, that's what I was
And
wondering too.
it totally confused me because I was told that this was a cleanup that was not breaking any new ground
It does not.
or adding to the tax burden. So why is it that this organization is opposing this? Are they opposed to the original?
I of course can't speak for that organization. However, my guess is that they are opposed to the original tax or surcharge or whatever you want to call it that was placed by that local law a year and a half ago.
Year and a half.
This changes nothing. It literally is a clarification of the word additional just to make clear what was originally intended. It does not change the amount. It does not change anything further beyond that. So it's literally just a cleanup because Tax and Finance's attorneys wanted literally the word additional in there.
Okay. Once again, for me personally, I had tremendously mixed emotions about this. I wanted to support the sheriff. I wanted to support E911. And we had a debate on the floor. For those of us who might have 10 phones on our account, this could be $350 a month per line, so $35 a month. So it could be a $400 or $500 increase. So what I'm trying to figure out now is, was that money collected? Is it in the corpus, or are we now gonna deduct it or tax for it, and it's going to be, in essence, the tax increase that we didn't have a year and a half ago? And I think that's important for us to know.
I think those are totally legitimate questions, but I think those are more tax and I think those are audit and finance questions.
Well, it's just
So we're not going to
audit
resolve it here in the
and
law committee.
I hope so.
Is this going to audit and finance?
It was, yeah, but those are still questions that can be raised in audit and finance.
Okay, but I want people here to understand that we, I find it not the fault of the county, but not knowing whether this money was collected and it's due and owing to us, or whether it's going to start to be collected again. And if we pass it, all of a sudden people are going to see large jumps in their cell bills. I think we sort of need to know that.
Okay, passing this fee was imposed in all events.
My
The question
understanding,
is, where has the money gone?
my understanding is that the fee was imposed, that monies were being collected from the various agencies, Verizon and such, and that the state has the money. What they intend to do with it at this point in time is another question entirely. But we cannot, my understanding is we cannot go back retroactively to get that money now. So we can certainly follow up with tax and finance, and we're trying to get answers, but at this point in time, this will not change what is being taken out of people's accounts. What was changed has already been changed, and it will not change further.
I guess I have to go into my cell bill and take a look at that list of 20 different, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's all right, sir. I guess a point of clarification, I guess I'm a bit confused. So this was passed a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Approximately.
So a year and a half ago, allegedly, they collected money from our constituents in their cell phone bills, is that correct?
They started collecting at that time,
For a specific purpose?
is my understanding,
And what was that purpose?
for this surcharge.
So how did they collect the money for a specific purpose and never used it for that specific purpose? And now that money that was collected for that specific purpose, we don't know where it's going.
That's an excellent question for the state.
We are, people are getting to the bottom of that, and totally legitimate questions, and we are exploring them. What we're trying to do tonight is stop that problem and correct it, and we will then go back and try to remedy what happened over the last year and a half, right? Correct.
But don't we have a fiduciary responsibility and on law committee and on finance, like Mr. Bergdorf said, to, if our law is defective, to have our answers to these questions before we correct a wording error? I'm just asking you as attorneys. Do we have a responsibility to correct what was going on and find out where the money went in the first place before
Well,
we change wording?
Not really, because it was collected by the state, but I understand your question, but that cannot be done in the same time that we are doing this. If we don't do this, we will continue not to collect money for the county moving forward indefinitely. And so E911 facilities will not have the benefit of getting this funds. What happens with what the state has done with this money that it apparently has been collecting, although it did not apparently recognize this law that was passed? To be determined. We will find out.
We gotta get to the bottom of that, absolutely. But in the meantime, let's stop the bleeding.
We gotta correct the law so that we can clean it up.
Yep,
So
because tax and
functioning
finance
That's what I'm
has
trying to say.
indicated, tax and finance has indicated they will not recognize this law without this additional word, additional.
So we can't clean it up without doing this.
We have I believe Dennis had made a motion.
Yeah.
Right, in addition to Dennis's motion, I would additionally like to second that motion.
Dr. McCullough.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry, Carolyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I just for my clarification, it sounds like a show me the money kind of thing here. I mean, if the money has already been collected, you said if retroactively, if they've been collecting money, which it appears they have, we have no ownership to that money that they collected in the last year and a half. Now we add this word additional to this, with this legislation going forward, we will be privy to those funds.
We have been assured by tax and finance that if we add the word additional, as they have requested, this is their specific request, they gave us this language exactly, and told us if we do not pass this language exactly, it will not count, and we will get nothing moving forward. So this.
But it's not saying that, I want to be clear, because I was listening to what Mr. Bergdorf said. Should I be looking at my bill to make sure that there's not additional, whatever the fee is, or has it already been coming out anyway?
My understanding is that it has already been coming out.
So, and nothing should change in my bill.
Nothing should change in your bills, exactly, because
As to where the money flows.
and that's a colloquial understanding. The state has not spoken as to whether they're remaining silent on whether they've actually are in control of this money. But what I have been told from multiple sources is that this money has been coming out. It has been getting collected through Verizon and through the various agencies. So it should not change your bill at all. It's already been coming out.
Okay, let me just say one thing. If $6 million has been collected, approximately, roughly, millions of dollars have been collected from people in Albany County pursuant to action by the Albany County Legislature, notwithstanding whatever technical word was missing, we should be moving heaven and earth to get that money. Like that, we should be talking to the state and saying that money was collected by actions that the Albany County Legislature took. That's our money. And whoever needs to do that should be following through on that.
Yep, and we're discussing with law on how to do that, so.
Right. Okay. But in the meantime,
Make one more
quick.
observation. Thank you, I appreciate that. This is going to be on Audit and Finance tomorrow night, right?
No,
It's only a law.
not according to the
Oh, it
agenda.
was not referred to Audit and Finance.
Cleaning up the law.
This is, probably will be at Audit and Finance at some point, but it doesn't need to be, we're just cleaning up the law tonight.
It's not-
Okay, I would like to know, before we vote on this, because it sounds like you want to put this out, and I understand that you want to do that, and to a certain degree, I kind of agree with it. But I want someone, and it shouldn't be me, to have to go to a Verizon bill and compare the rates that's in everybody's bill at the end of every month. It's real simple. As Carolyn said, do I gotta go look at my bill and see if it was taken out? If it was taken out, that, you're right, we gotta move heaven and earth, and if people gotta do a bill in the legislature to get us that $6 million back, they should, or whatever it takes. That's our money that was supposed to go to the E911 system. And you gotta remember that the state, and I'm gonna try to delicately say this, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the state collects something like $600 million in 911 tax and only gives something like $200 million to the counties. So they're already got a positive arbitrage on the E911 monies, and why should we give them another $6 million of our money? I mean, that's an equity argument, and I understand that. But I would just like someone to tell me, and with all the horsepower here, we've either been collecting it or not.
All right, we will get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Or not me, but somebody.
Somebody will before this
Okay.
thing
Yep.
gets passed.
All right, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Okay, we're gonna vote on this, right? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Thank you, everybody.